Hello, everybody. It is a pleasure to be here with you, the Secretary General of United Cities and Local Governments. And we are in this dialogue in order to leave no one behind. Leaving no one behind is this very important and powerful concept that gathers us together in the global agendas. It is making sure that everybody can live with the same possibilities, with a guaranteed quality of life, and we shouldn't forget about any person or territory. And these dialogues that we are organizing, these conversations about cities that UNDP and UCLG have been organizing these days, try to make us come closer to the decision makers for the communities and the citizenship. And today we have the great honor to be able to talk with the mayor of Santander in Spain and the acting mayor of Poitiers. So, with both, we will try to frame these conversations that are likely to be so big, these big concepts, and we want to narrow them down to the field of the decision making process, the political decision making process of the daily work at local level. And as it happens with the political process, typically, it's very personal. So we want to start with a quite personal question. I would like to start with Gema Igual, the mayor of Santander. Gema, I want to ask you, when did you decide to put yourself to the service of the people? Because being a mayor means being to the service of the people. When did that happen? Well, first of all, thank you very much, Emilia, for convening us both. And I'm very glad to meet the acting mayor of Poitiers. It is an honor for me to be with you and to explain to you from the more personal field our work, because oftentimes we don't get this question, and I love it. I started in politics very unwillingly because the mayor at that time knew me in my professional capacity and called me, so I didn't know what it meant to be a councilwoman. I didn't dare to say yes because I feared not to be at the level of the political party and a prestigious person like the mayor at that time. Neither did I want to say no because it was a challenge for me to be able to do things in the city in an honest, noble, and objective way. I thought I did not have to say no, so I did not answer until I was convinced again, and I was told that those doubts are good in politics. So I said yes. And then my political career, that is 20 years old, has changed due to personal commitments, people I've met in politics, and also because the then mayor, Inigo de la Serna, became Minister of Development, and unwillingly, once again, I became a mayor. But if I've been here for such a long time, it's because of the self commitment that you have to the city. It is a pro bono work because if we take the hours, the annoyances, and the happiness, that dimension is not paid with money, but neither can it be measured with any kind of measurement unit. It is a personal commitment. It's the satisfaction of the work well done, although not everything goes well. And above all, it is being a better person. I always say that since I became a mayor, I am a better person because I feel bad if I throw a piece of paper to the floor or if I cross a red light. You have to be an example. You have to try to establish fair and honest standards so that the city works. And we have to facilitate the life of peoples or to provide a better environment, the cities. The best of Santander, the Santander people. We are due to them. We have to take care of them. And as it is a small city where everybody knows me and where I cannot stop being a mayor, the love of the people also is a source of encouragement and also a reward. So I have to work for my city. Yes, that doesn't fail. Whenever we ask this question to the mayors, the council, men or women, the love for the city is one of the things that comes up the first. It's the love for the communities, the people. In your case, all the people in Santander? A very, very interesting answer, Gemma.
Is it the same for you, Ombelin? How did you decide to participate in the political life of your city? Well, I like to present myself as an elected citizen, and let me explain why. I like that. Well, this is because it is a first mandate of having been elected as a politician. And the truth is that in political engagement, my political engagement, actually, I can locate it at two findings or two main pillars of my engagement. One was by association, and secondly, I decided to run officially for the municipal elections. So the first pillar actually is the fact that our democratic system is not working as it is. It's not working well, at least. And I was very marked by the presidential elections of 2017, where there was an election in France that was very polarized, and it was marked by the uprising of the far right. And so this was like an electroshock for us, because you must understand that in France, the far right went from having 18% to having 42% of the votes in the presidential elections. This from 2002 to 2017. This made me react. Also, the abstention rates, which were extremely high. And this really exposes the reality both at municipal levels, regional levels, and national levels as well. So this was a challenge all in itself. And I also remember that some years ago, where I decided to become involved in politics, there were many challenges in politics which had to do with the general context, but also with a conjuncture in France. We had the Yellow Vests movement, and we also had the Nuit Debout movement. All of this led me to want to become involved in politics, but in a different way, with social movements, with movement of the people, with movements of citizens that demanded more transparency in politics, and also a representative democracy that could actually move into action. I was very marked by all of this. And another root of my engagement had to do with the climate emergency and how we became aware of this problem, what we call the Anthropocene. And this really pushed me forward. I was fully convinced at the time that it was through collective action that we could find a solution to the ecological and climate emergency. So all of this made the three pillars of action, and these are the three pillars of action of the municipality of Poitiers. And in the elections, in the list called Poitiers Collectif, there was a list full of citizens, just regular citizens that had decided to become involved in politics. That's why I like to call myself an elected citizen. And so we focus on ecological transition, social justice, and the renewal of democracy. Those are the three pillars of this municipality to really take part in the decision making and in the political life. So these are, in a way, the roots of my engagement. And this is why I am here talking to you. Excellent. Thank you very much. This is very interesting, because these are reasons that are very much related to the national and international context. So I would like to ask you another question, to ask you about inequalities in your city. Are inequalities a new thing, or are these inequalities that are more traditional and that a solution hasn't been found for them in the context of the city or even in the national context? Unfortunately, inequalities are nothing new. There are many types of inequalities, and we can ask ourselves maybe the type of inequality. There is political inequality. We know that in exercising our rights, unfortunately, we are not all the same, but there are also social inequalities that can be accumulated in certain neighborhoods There are certain priority neighborhoods in Poitiers because they face the greatest inequalities, both socioeconomic and also unemployment, and inequalities that take the form of discrimination and prejudice and bias against them, and that they have suffered for a long time. So when these accumulate, they become inequalities and they lead to situations of exclusion and vulnerability. In Poitiers, what we observe as well is because we started our mandate in 2020 and it is 2024 now, and we're seeing situation, and I know Gemma in Santander is probably understanding this, the problem of the war in Ukraine together with the pandemic of COVID-19. Since 2020, this created a stop to many of the projects that we were implementing, and of course the rise in the price of energy, of raw material, etc. So in Poitiers, the most fragile are the ones that are the most affected by all of these worldwide tragedies, because they lose their purchasing power and they lose, in a way, the power to live, the ability to live well. And what we observed here is that the cities are, in a way, in the front line to respond to the solidarity challenges. At the national level, sometimes they don't become involved. And so it is at the level of the municipalities that we must become most involved. And within this context that I just described, we had an increase in poverty. And we're paying close attention to the situation and the structural problems. One of the issues is food assistance. We're seeing the need to reinforce this because eating is a fundamental right, of course. So we're trying to reach those small households, those workers that are really in a precarious situations and are excluded and cannot access the basic means of subsistence. So they are affected by inequality, but it is an inequality that needs immediate attention and mobility by associations and by solidarity in an organized manner.
Gemma, I come here with a similar question. The mayor from Poitiers was telling us we have identified not a new type of poverty, but yes, something that is worsening the access to the food basket, to food. So the question for you is, do you feel that that is part of the new inequalities that you experience also in Santander? What is it that you are experiencing in Santander, a city that it's also intermediate? Well, I agree with many of the things that Ombilin has said. Um, Santander, in Santander, also with the pandemic and with the Ukraine war, the economic crisis worsened, and also the informal economy was justified with the lack of income in the pandemic. Actually, any store in the city during the pandemic has seen how the institutions, how the municipality gave them a grant. But if we talk about the informal economy that exists in the different levels, there we are more limited because the institutions depend on the legal framework. And in order to help the people, we need the legal framework. That's why we have to lean on other institutions, NGOs and associations. When we cannot reach everybody, we have to lean on those who can have a certain reach and can provide coverage to those that need the most. But truly, as my partner from Poitiers was saying, inequalities are a lot. We have to bear in mind that inequalities in a city can depend on the geographical location of the city, also the access to transportation, access to communication, the communication among the people, culture, the living on the streets, where, of course, the social, the economic situation, we've seen a worsening on access to employment. Being vulnerable means that you are just to the limit, on the limit, and when there is a gap, a stop, like the pandemic, if there is lack of income, the family is in trouble. So there are lots of inequalities. So, as I say, in the municipality, we have to be expectant and serving all the citizens. Of course, there are some other inequalities that are based on age, for example, the vulnerability of the elderly. And also, we have to approach that from another point of view. But if we talk about the people excluded with lower resources, we have 10 centers scattered throughout the city. They are social work units where we go to the neighborhoods. We are close to the people so that not only the person who is in problems comes to us, but rather the ecosystem, the neighbors, the rest of the institutions, the schools, the stores, the supermarkets also can provide us that warning. Oftentimes, the people who buy the basic stuff in the supermarket and stop buying, and also the elderly people who live alone and on a weekly basis go to the hair salon if they stop going, all those hints, those sensors that we have there in the city, in a small city that is very much connected, is very useful. Then every year we have a budgetary item. Santander has 200 million euros as a budget, and out of that amount, more than 15 are for social services. We have always 1 million euros for economic services for people in situation of emergency. If all of a sudden they have to rent a flat, we give them money for basic furniture. If they have to do extracurriculum activity for the children, well, for that we have coverage. Then with those almost 50 million euros, also we can provide help for reconciliation. It's very important for mothers to have access to the labor market, and so that having a baby is not just an impediment. We have grants for childcare and some reconciliation projects that are very interesting. Then more than 30 programs that we have throughout the city. We have 134 agreements that I mentioned before, and a center, the Center Princess Leticia. This is a hotel for the people who are in complicated situations that sometimes is something temporary, a person who lost income and maybe also he's undergoing a more complicated emotional situation and need to stay in a center place in the mid or long term if they commit to be part of a training project or program. Then we have also a possibility for employment. If you are at the Princess Leticia Center, we train, we empower people so that they can have access to the labor market. Once they had a job, we manage their income for the first 2 months so that they know that they cannot spend the money the first 10 days because the month has 30 days and they earn money once a week. Then we have supervised flats to help them manage share housing so that they are able to know that they have to buy according to the income they have, or that they can go out. They can go out to the movie theater, but it all depends on how much they saved during that period of time, so that then later on they have the independent life program. And those people who are in the worst situation, the 20 odd people that we have sleeping on the streets every night, we have a program for them that is called the Cold Wave. Every night with a vehicle, they go there and they bring them food, and we try to create a bond with them. It is called the Cold Wave because it started being the sixth coldest month, then the eighth coldest month, and then the whole year. But we still call it the same way. In the wintertime, we give them food, blankets, but above all, we want to create trust. We check how they feel. Have you taken the medication? How do you feel? Are you having a cold? Until we build the trust, so that then we propose to go to the Princess Leticia Center. Many of them don't want to go because they are affected by some kind of emotional disorder and emotional imbalance. There, the municipalities have little to do. I even talked with the Minister of Disabilities, but we don't have tools. We cannot force anybody to leave the streets. But we try to go through all the levels of society so that they can have in the street a place to stay with some possibilities. In the Princess Letitia's Center, they can stay in the medium or long term, but always provided they are part of a program. Once they have a job, we can make them have an independent life. And that €1 million can be expanded with the reconciliation program so that the families, once they are independent, they can maintain the level of life. Thank you very much, Gemma. There are very many examples that you are giving us. There are many, many measures to be implemented. And then we come back a little bit to explain why, with this big range of possibilities, still we are finding inequalities and people that are excluded. But now I would like to go back to Poitiers to ask whether the issues of housing and food security and people excluded, mental health problems are the problems that are also faced by Patois. What kind of public services you are implementing so that we can ensure equality and improve the quality of life of people? We give you the floor.
Yes, to answer your question, I believe that these are things that we do see here in Poitiers, issues of mental health. Obviously, with COVID-19, we've had a very strong impact in this sense. We work specifically with the CCAS, which is a Community Center for Social Action. We have these community centers in France and in our city. This association had a very important role in the creation of public policies to ensure the access to their rights, but also to assist those that were most vulnerable through grants, through social assistance, and especially in terms of health. Every year, we decide these grants, and that's the main aspect of the budget in Poitiers because it goes for social actions mostly. The goal is to fight against situations of exclusion. And if you ask me about what other public policies could be implemented, what I would like to say in that sense is that our identity since 2020 in Poitiers has many examples to be shared, but I want to express those that are most relevant for this conversation. First, I would like to mention a system that we implemented called job dating. Job dating is like a very informal work interview or job interview where some people that work in the municipality and that are in charge of economic development mostly go out there and go try to meet young people in the priority neighborhoods of the city. So we go outside the walls. We don't invite people to the institution. Yes, it's the typical thing that you see that you ask them to send you your resume, but this is the opposite. This is proactive. We go out there and we try to find those young people that are facing many socioeconomic difficulties and a lot of people who live far and it is very hard for them to go and find a job. So we go out and find them. We created 200 jobs. They were temporary jobs, but they do promote a virtuous circle because after they have that temporary job, they can maybe find another one and not be anymore in that situation of precariousness. The second thing that we did in Poitiers was our great concern for our society and its fragmentation. We're seeing more and more polarization. So what we tried to do specifically was to have an ambitious policy for people's education, for popular education, as it is called in French. So we created a national meeting for popular education, and we organized it last year and this year. We implemented a system called Vacances pour tous et toutes. This is vacation for all. What this means is that every year we propose activities, cultural events, etc., for families, for adults. And this year, we focused specifically on the elderly, people above 65 years of age who may find themselves isolated. And so we propose activities that are very accessible, because the truth is that being in a situation of precariousness doesn't mean that one doesn't deserve a vacation, that one doesn't deserve to enjoy a cultural activity. And therefore, we implemented different actions to try to focus on these leisure activities. We've been doing it for a few years here in Poitiers, and it's going very well. We focus specifically on the priority neighborhoods. And for us, this right to a vacation, this right to free time, really promotes social cohesion. And it is a means to create a collective spirit and to exercise your rights as a citizen, because it's not just accessing political or civil rights, but it's also the possibility of accessing spaces where there is a real social mix, where empathy can be cultivated, where people can understand each other. I think this is really a major step towards cohesion and towards social inclusion. It's a way of fighting, maybe indirectly, against different forms of discrimination. Thank you very much. Really interesting. I would like to now ask Hema, or maybe ask both of you, if you can share your experience regarding how we identify those people who are in this situation of vulnerability. Because Hema mentioned this briefly.
You were describing just like our friend from Poitiers told us. You were talking about talking with the civil society and NGOs has been and it is something very important for you, but also you were describing a lot that social fabric, the contacts, the informal contacts that monitor the situation of people where they are in their lives. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you structure this? Yes, we have two tools. One is the official one, which can be checked with data, and the other one is the extra-official one. The official one, such as Poitiers, we have projects to have access to employment. Here we call that local corporations, that is the people who have been unemployed for more than 2 years. They enter a database so that the municipalities, because this is done throughout the autonomous community, Santander, and the 101 municipalities of Cantabria. They enter a database, and there we choose the people that we need not to do the ordinary work of the town hall, but for support for specific work. So also we are a location agency for those people that are unemployed. Then the town halls hire through private corporations certain services, for example, services for parks and gardens, the recollection and daily cleaning of the parks. So we urge the companies to hire vulnerable groups in parks and gardens. For example, together with a company, we created a training course for women above 45 who are unemployed. There is a more sensitive group, the women of certain age, where if they have never had a job or if they had to stop to take care of the children, it is very difficult for them to find a job. Well, with the private companies that help us, we create focused programs for vulnerable people in terms of having access to a job, and then the social corporate responsibility of the company also is focused, and we have a web page, the web page that is a liaison, where the companies post their corporate social responsibility projects and the NGOs take those projects, or the other way around. The NGO mentions which project they want to develop and how much money they need, and the companies pay for those projects. And then also there are informal channels when the lady or the social worker goes to the town hall or the social work unit and explain a situation of vulnerability. For example, this lady is a widow, has no uh, resources, has no income, or this lady has separated, the children request part of the inheritance, which is the flat, she's in the street, or she's helpless because she has no money to pay for the flat, or I see that she's not very well fed. So here also we have the support of the church, Caritas Parroquiales or Cocina Económica, where we are talking about a soup kitchen. They never request any kind of documentation to feed people. And there is a supermarket, and in order to avoid any kind of stigma, people are given a card or a wallet where they can go to different supermarkets and they can buy with the funds that are charged in the card to avoid a situation in which in a family the boy who is 5 years old wonders why he has to go always to the same supermarket and not to the other one. So we have other formulas where we try to take care of people. And we want to empower people, the people who are in a complicated situation, because if they themselves don't have the strength and the tools that should be provided by the municipality, but if they don't have the strength to overcome the situation, it's very difficult to overcome the situation. Especially, we want to empower them, to give them the tools they need, the training, the culture, the access to employment opportunities. We also have bonus where we provide free childcare provided they are being trained or they are in an interview, in a job interview. Access to internet. There are certain people where they have a social economic situation in which they don't know how to look for a job. There are job offer browsers. Certain people can go in person to a counter and look for a job, but they don't know how to do that on the web. So that is also important. Very, very interesting. I believe that this combination of making sure that we work with all the stakeholders and that we contact all these stakeholders, the private sector, the public services, of course, and the NGOs, that is something very important. But I like really a lot this special focus on the knowledge, the wisdom of the neighborhood, the knowledge in terms of what's going on around us, and based on that, starting to support the people. Now I move on to Ombelin.
In your city, how do you identify those that need your support the most? I said it before, I don't know if it was heard, but the thing is that the purpose of everything that was developed, and I agree with my colleague in Santander, that the response is co-collective. This fight against inequalities requires a partnership as an approach. It requires partnerships between the city and the other institutions and agencies that act in the city to best identify difficulties. In France, we have a specific department that focuses on solidarity and social actions. And we also have issues of related to families, etc. But we work in the field, and they control the territories and they help with the different associations that work there. So these partnerships are very, very strong. And to add maybe something additional in this idea of leaving no one behind, I think that it is our responsibility as an institution to change our position and go out there and find the people that are in need. It's what I said before with the job dating, to really go out there and find those people who are far away, who are undergoing a situation of rupture, and really give them a voice to exercise their rights. I believe that this is extremely important. We cannot talk about a full society or a fully democratic society if we only include a small part of that society. There cannot be a society without everyone included. In Poitiers, we use random draws or random selection of people. And why do we do this? We select a series of systems, of participatory systems that exist already in terms of democracy to better share in a horizontal manner. But we believe it has a greater impact and greater effectiveness if it is done randomly to avoid, having always the same people participating, they always the same faces and the same voices. What we do is to select them randomly because, like I said, it is our responsibility to go out there and find those people who never get to participate. And the goal is really to have more effectiveness and more relevance in our public policies, starting from the principle that we need to know the needs of those who are in need. And as a public actor, we need to implement these actions to respond to the specific needs and implement actions to reduce inequalities, to reduce discrimination. As a result, I believe that going out there and finding these people who need our public policies allows us also to have public policies that are more adapted, more fair, and more in solidarity with the people that need them. So I really think that there are certain politics that there are situations in which I don't really understand the needs because I have a degree, I don't live in a marginalized area. And so I really need to step into someone else's shoes to understand what their needs are. And I need to find those people. I need to go outside these walls and find these people. This is a construction of the real solutions.
Very interesting, very interesting. This approach, both of you agree a lot on that proactive policy. It's not simply to wait and see what happens, but rather look for the opportunities, not to wait until the help is requested, but rather to go out and identify those that might be in need. So I believe that there you truly agree. And it also has to do with those dimensions, the cities that you have. And that is the great advantage of intermediate cities. But we are convinced that it can be applicable to all the sizes of cities. So we are running short of time. And I would have a final question, maybe two last questions for both. Which is still that dream that you have from the municipality? What would be your priority? And if you could have a wish, what would you like to obtain or change? That is one thing. And the other thing is, would you like to ask something between you two? Do you feel curiosity about something that you have heard? Please don't doubt to talk about that. Who wants to start? Hema, you want to start? Perfect. Well, first of all, what I would like is to visit Poitiers because I haven't been there, and also to have a relationship now that we met in order to be able to copy what we did well and to avoid what did not go well. I firmly believe in teamwork, in working in networks. Everyone in our cities, we try to do our best beyond the political colors, the best for citizens. But at times, when you get to know other points of view and experiences, you learn. So I would be really thrilled to maintain this relationship or receive my partner or being able to exchange opinions that would always lead to growth. And the desire of a mayor, if he or she is noble, is to have the best city to live, to invest, and to spend the last time in life. But we know that a city is always unfinished. We have to go step by step. We don't have to have big dreams because they are unattainable. We should have big destination. We should have a long-term roadmap and with a final goal. But we have to go step by step. And everything that we do, we should be accepted, assumed by the citizenship with a lot of communication and a didactic approach. And we should know the citizens to advance them. I cannot go to the neighbor and tell him that he's to blame because here I have the money the budget for social services. I should know that he's not going to read the official bulletin of the state. He has enough with managing his life and having little resources for his children. So he doesn't have the illusion in terms of going to the town hall or receiving aid. I have to think that he's a person that he is increasingly becoming smaller because he's unsuccessful in life. I should know all that to go to him, to raise him, to offer him opportunities, to generate an illusion, and to give him tools in order to manage them. So I believe that the knowledge, being realistic, I cannot measure myself against Madrid or Barcelona. I have to be realistic, know my city, I have to know the citizens, and the aid that can be given is to be straightforward and go for it, and not to double efforts. There are many institutions that can have contact with the same citizen, but we have to be communicated among ourselves to avoid giving the same 3 times. And maybe there are other shortcomings that are not met. So I believe that we have to step in the shoes of all the stakeholders to communicate a lot, to talk a lot, and to have the citizen in the center of our work. Today we are talking about the most disadvantaged, but tomorrow we will talk about the entrepreneurs. So let's put in the shoes of the entrepreneur to know what he needs. I believe that that is my dream, to put in the shoes of all the people from Santander, to know their needs and to save to meet those needs. Thank you very much, Gemma. I've been to Santander, and I believe that yes, you can measure yourself against Madrid and other cities, because ultimately that quality of life can be guaranteed in many ways. And I really stay with this issue of the big dreams. Yes, in fact, we should have big destinations and ambitions, but we should not be stagnation in reflection, but rather we should go step by step. So we stay with that thought. And well, I believe that Omelil, you have to invite him to Poitiers. It's not possible for the mayor of Santander not to visit Poitiers. Now it's your turn.
With great pleasure. You are more than invited and welcome here in Poitiers so that we can continue exchanging. And I do echo Gemma's words because I think it's so important to share, to exchange. And I would like to thank you very much for this invitation, really, because this sort of exchange creates bonds. And creates and fosters exchange between the cities with shared challenges and common objectives. Of course, we are all in the context of the climate emergency, and all of these actions are very necessary. So, thank you very much for this invitation and this possibility to share and exchange. And regarding my dream, I think for Poitiers is something that we are all looking for as a society, which is happiness and well being. A very simple concept, but really it's what we try to achieve, to have a place that everybody should have a place in the city, and that institutions are there to protect them in a situation of difficulty, and a city that really promotes the independence of each person and protects the most fragile members of the population. So I think that the objective is equality and democracy, a solid democracy that has to be reinforced. In Poitiers and in France in general, I think that we are a country that has had to see a rise in violence of young people who mobilized and who, in a way, were expressing anger, were expressing their rage and their disappointment with the institutions. And this, of course, accumulated in certain neighborhoods that suffered the highest levels of inequality. So I think that a response is to open up spaces for collective action and for dialogue where citizens can really be heard and can be considered in decisions. Because there is an ideal of democracy that exists, and this ideal is something that we have to go after, considering, of course, all of the climate aspects that are mentioned, all of the needs to protect our planet through public actions, and that are so necessary to be in our spirit.
Thank you very much. A great inspiration. Yesterday, we were in a conference on democracy, about the state of democracy, and I was saying that 86% of people in the world, according to the big survey, say that they want to live in democracy. But out of that 86% of people, the youth between 18 and 35 years of age only represent 57%, the ones that prefer democracy. And on Berlin, you have dared me to reflect upon this when you both really focus on the youth, on knowing the neighborhoods and taking ownership. So I wonder, I believe that the youth should listen to more conversations like this and should listen to the public servants as you, like you, talking about your intent, what you do beyond the electoral circumstances. We have to make this conversation reach everybody in order to become responsible so that the agenda becomes collective, so that we can draw all the stakeholders, and so that happiness really shall be the final goal. I really like, Omelian, the how you have mentioned emancipation for all the groups, because the representation of human beings really is something that is very important. Oftentimes the representation is more important than some of the basic needs. And I can only feel great pride because with leaders like you, I believe that we have secured a good road ahead for this goal that is not only a slogan of global agendas, which is leaving no one behind. That is that on behalf of UNDP and UCLG and all the partners that enable this encounter, I thank you. As a citizen, I say goodbye. A very big hug. Well, thank you very much. And above all, the youth should also get involved with politics to become mayors and council people, because we need experience, we need illusion where with respect we can talk about everything and with everybody, and it is essential for them to really come closer to politics. Exactly. Thank you very much. Ombelian, anything else that you want to add?
No, not really, but just that this is exciting. I'm really enthusiastic about the perspectives. A lot of work to do in the future. Indeed, a lot of work to do. But thank you very much for this exchange because it was very fruitful, very rich discussion. And I think this type of webinar with other cities, I think that it's a very interesting initiative, and I will look forward to following those. Thank you.